The Budget 2020, how did it affect small businesses? In this video, I'm going to look at the announcements that the Chancellor made and also the things that he didn't announce and how they affect small businesses. I'll be looking at the detail of the budget over the coming weeks and maybe months. And as that affects small businesses, I'll be making future videos. So please subscribe to the channel so that you get all the updates. And if you like the video, please like it because that really helps me. Thank you. So today is still the budget day. I wanted to make sure that we get this information to you as quickly as possible so that you get your budget update so that you can understand how the budget affected small businesses. Of course, the Chancellor was to some extent overshadowed by the announcement by the Governor of the Bank of England at 9 o'clock this morning to reduce interest rates from 0.75% to just 0.25%. That's a 0.5% cut in interest rates. And it's very difficult for them to reduce interest rates very much further because at 0.25%, there just isn't very far to go. Although that said, in the euro area, they already have negative interest rates. So who knows? Moving on to the budget, I thought what was interesting, not just what he said, and he said quite a lot, but also what he didn't say. What struck me was that this was very much a business as usual budget because there were no changes to the main tax rates, the main tax allowances, to the main taxes. It was very much about spending. There are a lot of spending announcements and actually very few, very specific tax announcements. What a lot of people were looking for was changes to the IR35 rules because the IR35 rules are changing on the 5th of April, but there was no announcement about those. So the rule changes are going to happen as far as I can tell. The other thing that we were looking at was whether the pension rules were going to change. We were worried that high rate tax relief might be stopped, but there were no such changes. In fact, to some extent, the pension rules were made more generous. The other thing that is going to be maintained is the living wage. The increases to the living wage are going to continue, and the plan is to increase them over the next coming years. So people who have a lot of low-paid staff, then that will have a material effect on your business. So what did he announce? There was a small announcement in relation to people's national insurance. So when you start paying national insurance, it will increase by about £1,000 to £9,500 from the 5th of April this year. So that's for employees. They'll pay a little bit less national insurance, just over £100 a year. So that's for most employees. And the intention is to keep on increasing that so that people start paying income tax and national insurance on £12,000 and a bit. What he didn't announce was an increase in when employers pay national insurance. So the suggestion is, and the only way I can read that, is that employers are still going to pay the same national insurance, although employees will pay a little bit less. So that was quite a little nuance in the budget. However, for small employers, the £3,000 allowance that you get will be increased to £4,000. So that's a small benefit to employers who have less than 250 employees. There are two main increases in tax. One relates to entrepreneurs' relief. So for entrepreneurs' relief, if you, in the past, you had a £10 million of gain before you paid the standard rate of capital gains tax, that's been reduced from £10 million to £1 million. Now, for most of my clients, and particularly if you're a husband and wife team, you've got £1 million each before you pay the main rate of tax. And for most people, that's actually enough. The other increase in tax was a 2% additional stamp duty tax for overseas people who are buying houses in the UK. There were also a number of reliefs that are available on a temporary basis for small businesses. So for rates, there's a whole load of rates relief that's going ahead, particularly in relation to the hospitality businesses and anything where people get together, which are expected to be adversely affected by the virus. But also for small businesses that don't pay rates at the moment, so you get full relief at the moment, as you can't get any more relief than that, they're actually going to give us all a £3,000 grant. So for most of my clients who have small businesses, including myself, I'll get a £3,000 grant. So that's very welcome. There are also some important changes in relation to sick pay. The government will pay sick pay, so people will not have to get a doctor's certificate in order to get sick pay, and the government will give all the sick pay back to the employer. So that is really helpful. And it must be remembered that sick pay is also payable to the owners of the business. So if you're sick because of the virus, then you can also claim sick pay and get that refunded from the government. So and I think that's quite an important little help. The other two announcements that relate to the virus is in relation to time to pay. So they've announced that they will be very generous in allowing us time to pay for our taxes, although of course we will still need to pay them. But if you ring them up, then they will give you a right to pay. And I've no idea how you're going to prove that it's virus related, but I presume that they're just going to be very flexible about that. And they've also made arrangements with the banks to give short-term loans for small businesses. Of course, loans and slow payments don't get you away from the fact that you will need to make the payments, and the business interruption that we could have a significant effect, particularly on some businesses more than others, but on all businesses to some extent, I would suggest. There were some changes to research and development tax credits, and I'll do a separate video on research and development tax credits. But the good news is they've been just made a little bit better, so that's helpful. And there were no significant changes to property taxes, and I was somewhat concerned that there might be more problems for landlords and buy-to-let landlords, but that didn't seem to be the case. So with all these tax giveaways, what paid for the sort of magic money tree to work? Well, quite a lot of it, when you look at the numbers, quite a lot of it was just not reducing corporation tax, because in the initial plan, they were going to reduce corporation tax from 19% to 17%, and that's not going ahead. And that created a lot of revenue. I've already talked about the tightening up of the entrepreneurs relief and the increase in stamp duty for overseas buyers, so that's just helped a bit. When I look through the sort of detail of where the money's coming from, the only other thing that's big was they're going to increase. They expect £1 billion a year from tightening up on compliance by the revenue. So the revenue are going to tighten up on compliance, and that's going to give them £1 billion a year. Now that's a bit double-edged, isn't it? Because as a taxpayer, you want the revenue to be and everybody to be compliant. But it's a bit like going to the dentist. You sort of know you have to do it, but you might not enjoy the process. And it does mean that it's going to be even more important to, get all your taxes in on time and get all your taxes correct, because the revenue at the moment check virtually nothing. And I've always thought, well, yeah, they check nothing, but we still should do it right, because things should be right because they should be right. I have a suspicion that the fact that the revenue checks so little, that there are people out there that don't do things right. And I think we can expect more investigations. And I'm quite relieved, really, that we now have fee protection insurance, so that if my clients get inspected, at least in most cases, then the cost of defending themselves is covered through that. The final thing that I want to talk about is a change to the pension rules that particularly affects higher paid people in the public sector. There are senior teachers, head teachers, and consultant doctors who are just beginning to edge over earning £110,000 a year. And that can give them the mother of all pension problems because of the way that the pension rules and the final salary pension scheme rules work. It can give very big tax liabilities, and under the law of unintended consequences, what it means is that doctors are refusing hours, and the government doesn't want that at now of all times. So what they've done is they've increased all the tapering by £90,000. So basically, nobody's really affected by tapering unless they earn over £200,000 a year, which in terms of public sector workers sort of covers you all off. And indeed, there aren't a whole load of private sector people, particularly in the Northwest, who earn more than £200,000. So that's a more generous pension rules, And there were some fears that the pension rules might actually be tightened. So that's my update for the budget for 2020. The overriding thing is that it's business as usual. There's no main changes in the taxation, not that affect small businesses. There are some tweaks in relation to the virus, and there are some tweaks just to give people a little bit more money. And then the main emphasis of the budget was on spending, which isn't very much to do with me as an accountant. Thank you for watching, and please like the video if you can, because that helps me. And if you want to see future updates, then subscribe to the channel. Thank you.